We are. Welcome, everyone. I am Christina with Fort Bend County Libraries, and I would like to welcome all of you to our program, Understanding the Lawn. Today presenting will be Boone Holladay, who is a county extension agent from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Let me introduce him really fast. So Boone holds an undergraduate degree in horticulture from Stephen F. Austin State University and a master's degree in agricultural education from Texas A&M University. Gig'em. Long before attaining these degree titles, he was an avid gardener and a young plant enthusiast. He brings previous experience as horticulture staff at Moody Gardens in Galveston, Producers Cooperative in Bryan, and Texas A&M Horticulture in College Station. Having work experience in many horticulture areas and industry, from retail horticulture to landscape design and irrigation installation, he brings that knowledge paired with enthusiasm into Fort Bend County programming efforts. And now I turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Christina. I appreciate it. And we've been really thankful for this partnership with our Landscape Success Series this year with Fort Bend Libraries. So thank you again, Christina, for working with us. Um, just a little housekeeping. I've got a lot of material for this presentation today. So for us to do everything in an hour and a half, it's going to be jam packed. So um, I'm going to try to cover everything with turf grass. So more than likely, I will at some point answer your question. But if there's something that you think that I surfed past and didn't address, just type those questions into the chat dialogue. And we've got several of our master gardeners on there wrangling questions as they come in. If it's something that they can address, they will message back in the chat. If it's something that they think I should address during the presentation, they will reach out to me and I'll expand upon it as needed. So without further ado, let's get going. Okay, did find this PowerPoint, so this will be better than my PDF version of the presentation. So here we go, understanding the lawn. Take off now. All right. So our outline for today's presentation, which was originally created by Michael Potter, who's our county extension agent for horticulture in Montgomery County. And I've adapted this, tweaked it, downsized it a little bit, made it work for Fort Bend County. Things that we're going to be covering today are physiology, selection, tips for lawn renovation, turf grass maintenance, common lawn problems, including weeds and bugs. So we're going to go through all that. Here we go. Turf grass. It's a big deal. It is what we consider our largest agricultural crop in the United States. This is always a trick question for us of asking people what that is, and we get cotton, corn, and wheat, and all these other answers. But yeah, we are turf grass. Whether this is sports fields, public right-of-way, lawn, home lawns, added together, this is about 1.9% of the total surface area of the United States is some type of either poorly managed or extremely managed turf grass. The benefits of turf grass are extensive, and this is assuming otherwise we would have bare dirt here in this location or gravel or concrete. We do support biodiversity in our urban and suburban communities. It does help with the absorption and the sequestration of environmental pollutants. It is a phytoremediator, so it helps to clear up contaminated soils. It helps to offset the urban heat island effect by absorbing sun rays. It improves water filtration and retention into the soil, helps the water sponge and go down, so thus helping to control soil erosion. It has a pleasant aesthetic. It can be therapeutic, being out on the managed turf grass, playing, doing exercises, taking a nice nap during some spring weather, or utilizing that for recreation activities or social events. So lots of reasons why we have turf grass. First one we're going to talk about here is the plant itself. So grass versus turf grass. Well, what's the difference? Well, in the state of Texas, we have about 500 species of what we consider grass. And the vast majority of these grasses, um, these will be pasture grasses or prairie grasses, but they are not species that can survive by being mowed down low and managed the way that we want to manage a grass in a home landscape situation. There's really just not that many that can handle the mowing and that can handle the traffic of us walking around, having dogs, playing, rolling around on a grass. There's only several different species that can tolerate that and continue growing. So considering this as far as the whole part of the plant, we've got our roots, we've got our rhizomes, crowns, stolons, nodes, leaf blades, and our sheaths, and our flower, which would eventually turn into a seed head, are all the parts of the anatomy of a grass. Has to have all these parts. So with a turf grass, what we're doing here is we're cutting this about this high on a grass species, not really wanting it to ever elongate and produce a seed head. So a lot of different types of species of grass, all they really want to do is grow up, produce a stem with flowers and seeds. We're not interested in that. We want a species of grass that's going to spread out by stolons and rhizomes and create new little baby plants, create some density in our lawn area. A lot of factors at play when we start selecting turf grass species: water, the density of shade, the intensity of use, our mowing requirements, and then maintenance, how much maintenance we want to um, give our time or our money to keeping it looking nice and lush and green. So the first one here, density. Um, some species are going to give you this nice, dense, well-managed green look. Other species are going to look more sparse, open. So you would have to just kind of depend what your preference is based off of how much you're willing to put into it. Texture, a lot of different textures of turf grass, a fine texture like our hybrid Bermuda grass, and coarse textures like our St. Augustine or our Japonica zoysia turf grasses. Color is a big thing. We want something that's grayish, green, or do we want something that's bluish green or lime green? It's going to vary by species. We have some grasses like our St. Augustine grass that spreads by stolons, and these are above ground runners. They go on the top of the surface and spread out, and as they spread out, the grass creates root nodules or adventitious roots at the end of each of these little nodes here, and so it roots down, and this is how this grass moves around. Other grasses like this hybrid Bermuda grass here create stolons and rhizomes. Rhizome is similar to a stolon, but it's underground. This is a stem that's moving underground laterally. Man, I'm going to have to get rid of this. Let's see here. I clicked on this thing. I shouldn't have clicked on it. Can you get rid of that? Okay, there it goes. All right, and then there's other grasses that are bunching types. So as they mature, they just kind of grow out as a larger bunch each year, and eventually the bunches will connect, and you'll have a solid stand here. Oh. So for us, we're limited to certain grasses. We have by far our largest growing season is the warm season. So we have these warm season turf grass species here. And this is kind of the full list of what we have to work with for a perennial turf grass. And that means that a grass that's going to be there for many years for us versus an annual grass that we plant at a certain time of the year, and then it grows, matures, and dies within a year or two. So these are the grasses that we tend to work with. We do have some Bermuda grass lawns, but by far we have a whole lot of St. Augustine turf grass in Fort Bend County. Now for us, these cool season grasses just don't work for us. Now some people will overseed with either annual ryegrass or a perennial ryegrass to green up an area over the winter months. That's really all we're going to get out of these guys here. It's just a temporary greening. These will not perennialize for us. So basically what we see here is these ranges of turf grass based off climate. And we are kind of right in this transition zone that is referenced here as hot, humid, and tropical. uh, how nice, huh? Hot and humid. Yep, that's our climate area for sure. They got it right. So we're limited to that range of species. So as we move further north or either east or west, there's going to be different species of turf grasses that perform better than the ones that we have to offer here. Yep, so here we go. We have our areas where our cool season grasses tend to perform well, and then down by us, our warm season turf grasses. So what we see here with this is kind of a snapshot of a year's worth of growth of a cool season turf grass, which grows kind of in the cool of spring, and then it dies back in summer or goes dormant, and then it kind of grows back again in the fall and winter. Completely opposite from our warm season turf grass, which goes dormant in the winter and starts to grow roots and new shoots in the spring, has the vast majority of its growth and development through the hot, and then tapers down in the fall and winter and goes dormant again. So let's look at each of these turf grasses real quick. For our warm season turf grasses, each of these species that we tend to recommend or are available by sod farms throughout our region. Again, Bermuda grass, that's a good turf grass because it is heat and drought tolerant. It handles traffic really well. It doesn't have much disease pressure, but its shortfall is that if you have any shade whatsoever, the Bermuda grass is going to fail for you. Just does not grow well in it. And so if you go over here, kind of backwards, St. Augustine grass, its main strength is shade tolerance. It is not a shade loving plant. Okay, I get that a lot from people, but this is incorrect. It is shade tolerant. The more deep shade that we have, even St. Augustine grass is going to decline on you pretty quick. Weaknesses for it are traffic doesn't Doesn't handle a whole lot of foot traffic. If you've got a flag football practice team or something, not a good idea to do that on St. Augustine grass. And then cold sometimes can sneak up on St. Augustine. It doesn't handle extreme cold very well. It is a southern warm season turf grass that's actually originated native um, from Florida, South Florida. Zoysia. Zoysia, there's two different types of zoysia. I'll talk about those here in a second. Um, but it is heat, drought, shade tolerant, handles moderate traffic. It is tends to be somewhat low input, but downfall to it is that it gets real thatchy. That means you get a lot of that yellow buildup um, within the turf layer, and it's hard to get rid of that. Sometimes it's recommended to cut zoysia with a reel mower that twists this way instead of a rotary mower, and that can be difficult. Um, so everything here has its positives and negatives, but by and large, St. Augustine grass for us is probably our best selection, especially if you have some trees in the landscape. Um, it tends to handle the best for us. Are we doing good on the questions, Suma?
There is one question, Boone. So when overseeding on St. Augustine, what's the kind of grass seed that's recommended for long-term growth?
Mm-hmm. Well, to be honest with you, it's not recommended. The problem with the overseeding with ryegrass on St. Augustine grass is that, well, let me go back. I'll show it to you in a pretty good example. Okay. So consider this your cool season grass, which for us, the best option would be perennial ryegrass. So this is when this grass grows. And this is when your warm season grass grows. Okay. So this grass, if you plant the winter grass, it's going to be green. And then right here in spring, it's growing like crazy. But ryegrass loves early spring while it's still really cool and moist out. It grows like crazy. But this is the exact time that St. Augustine grass is trying to come out of dormancy. And so, man, it really hurts your St. Augustine grass because it can't get to the sunlight. It's competing for sunlight, water, nutrients, root space with this overseeded grass. And so by the time this ryegrass diminishes, and your St. Augustine is really weak um, and really thin, sparse, and you end up with more problems than you would with just letting that grass, letting your St. Augustine grass go dormant. Yeah, it doesn't look perfectly green in the winter, but that's just the nature of the beast. Best thing to do is not overseed. You'll see people overseed in like commercial plantings, shopping centers, and etc. These are turf situations that are um, very highly maintained. Like they have crews that are out there every week checking the irrigation, fertilizing, mowing, weeding. And so in those situations, they can kind of get away with it because they know that there's a lot more inputs that are needed on their end. But for a homeowner residential situation, we don't recommend it.
So the follow-up is like, is resodding the only solution for bare spots?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll probably address that here in a little bit.
Okay.
So in this situation we have right here, this is St. Augustine. So we've got a couple trees here in this landscape. But throughout the day, as the sun moves across, we will have some direct sunlight on this area, and we will have filtered sunlight uh, penetrating the canopy of these trees. If we get into a situation where these trees get so large that there is no direct sunlight on this area, then we would expect that this center area right in here would start to diminish. And unfortunately, if the trees don't go away, that problem is not going to go away. It's going to continually get worse. And so this area will become sparse. So you would be forced at some point to put a mulched bed area in here, a shade loving ground cover, etc., instead of fighting to keep it growing. But in this case here, with full sun periodically through the day and filtered sunlight, it can grow in the shade. And these are common St. Augustine varieties here. Really, rally or common are going to be what you're going to tend to see at the garden centers or the turf farms. A new one that Texas A&M's come up with is TAM Star, and this is more of a drought tolerant variety selection that is going to use less water. Bermuda grass, we have a hybrid, which is going to be really cut low and very dense, and then our common Bermuda grasses are going to be taller and more gangly looking. You're just not going to get the effect that you would out of your hybrids. And this is in full sun again. Okay, this you're not going to get this look if you have shade whatsoever. So for your hybrids, tend to going to see Tifway is going to be our common, or there's several TIF varieties, and these are varieties that came out of the University of Georgia. Christina, if you wouldn't mind, I think we've got one person that's maybe unmuted. And then our common Bermuda grass, celebration around here tends to be the one that we get the most play with. And this is a good variety. It doesn't take as much maintenance as these hybrids do. A lot of more regular irrigation, fertilizers, aeration, etc. So this would be a good option here, would be the celebration on the commons. For zoysia grass, move this down a little bit. For zoysia, we have two different species. We have madrella, which is a very fine, shortcut zoysia grass, and then the japonica grasses that really resembles more of a St. Augustine grass. It looks kind of like a compact version of St. Augustine. Again, these are pretty drought tolerant, shade tolerant, but they are prone to thatching, which is all this yellow and brown stuff in here that you have to keep them mowed and raked up regularly so that you can keep that thatch layer to a minimum. All right. And varieties of these, emerald is going to be the one here that you'll see the most. And then over here, palisades is going to be the one that you tend to see on the japonica zoysia available. So this kind of goes back to the winter. This is what St. Augustine kind of looks like for us while it's dormant. And yeah, you know, you're tempted to overseed this with a winter grass to make it look pretty and green, but really, this is just natural. So our recommendation is just to leave it like that, let it rest, and then come back in the spring, and we'll start managing it as it comes out of dormancy. And then, you know, the zoysia and Bermuda grass in middle of winter, you know, this is going to be completely dormant. You can see the understory of the grass here. It's still in there, but it's just sleeping. And you know, first or second mow in the spring, you'll be cutting all this off anyway. There's a question there real quick. I need to answer that, Suma.
I don't think so because I think you already addressed this. This is more like to do with the shade. Does Joyce perform better under large trees than St. Augustine? But you already addressed that. Which grass is better for shade?
Yeah, really
Yeah.
St. Augustine is our best option. Zoysia does handle some shade, but if you put them in the ring together, St. Augustine is still our best option. But again, none of these are shade loving. they're they're tolerant of shade, and so also tolerance. Let's talk about drought real quick. We haven't been dealing with drought in a couple years around here, but when we get back into that again, this will become a decision maker for people. Is that Bermuda grass for us is the highest in tolerance, and then we're kind of down here. The St. Augustine grass. It's not a water hog, but it is going to need some water periodically, or else it's going to try to go dormant in the summertime, and that's a stress-induced dormancy, and we just don't really want the plant to do that. So we do have to be cognizant of how much water we're applying to the St. Augustine. Um, Anybody know what type of grass this is here? Am I getting any guesses, Suma?
Not yet. Is this Joycia? Fescue? Somebody guess fescue?
No, good try. That's artificial turf. This is plastic.
No wonder it looks so beautiful.
Sorry about that, y'all. I had to trick you one time.
To wake us
So
up.
there, yeah. So I've got a couple of these here. Um, you can get artificial turfs in different colors, textures. Ones that are made to look like Kentucky bluegrass, and other ones that are made to look like a zoysia or a golf course grass. Um, which in some situations under trees or areas, if you have a small patio or something, it might not be a bad option for you. But here's kind of the one thing to be thinking about if you're going artificial. This is a temperature test done midsummer. So it took a temperature here of our Bermuda grass, middle of the day, heat of the summer, 104 degrees. Temperature of asphalt next to the planting, 136. And temperature above the synthetic turf, 165 degrees. Um, that's that's enough to start burning feet when you walk out there. So the difference between synthetic turf and natural lawn grass is that the plant it's going through photosynthesis, so it's absorbing the sun rays and capturing the heat from the sun, capturing the energy from that, and then it's turning that into energy for the plant. These artificial turfs aren't able to do that, so they accumulate the heat, and that's why you get this high temperature. So in full sun situations, large areas going into artificial turf, until the science catches up and they're able to create something that addresses this issue, I would be hesitant about the usage situations for artificial turf. All right. Lawn renovation. You got a bad lawn. Let's see what our options are. First one here that's going to be crucial for you is site preparation. Okay. We can't just put grass on compacted weeds. We need to do the work. So cultivate the soil, improve the texture if it's too compacted or too heavy, add compost if necessary. And it can just be the top couple inches, but just something so that when that turf grass that you've planted is rooting in, that it has something to root into, something that can hold oxygen and water, so that the roots will go down into it. Not this. Okay, so what we see here is a pretty sparse turf grass area, and then just this very shallow 1 to 2 inch layer of topsoil, and then just rock underneath that. This is cursed. There's just no way this is ever going to perform because there's not a good soil depth in here. So we'd have to do a whole lot of work on this site to get good quality turf grass. Other situations, if you just have lawns that just kind of fell apart on you and have just gotten inundated with weeds, and you can't spray enough weed killers, you can't fertilize it and water it enough, it's just getting thin. So sometimes that's just the decision um, of what to do there. And some, some big problems. You have the wrong species. Um, you've got voids in the area. You've got trees in the area. You've got Bermuda grass that's found its way into your Augustine grass. So there's lots of reasons why you would just start over and just remove the turf and start over again. And I'll get to explaining that a little bit later in the presentation. Another thing that's pretty important for us to think about is aerification. And this is on a sports field setting here, but the concept is the same, is that we use some type of a machine that is going to um, move down into the soil and pull up a core several inches deep, and that's going to allow a pore space into the soil so that we can loosen the soil up so that we have room for water and air to penetrate that soil profile. So for instance, here we have this thatchy area of grass. We want to allow areas for water and for fertilizer to move through this thatch. So we will aerate this and create little voids so that our inputs actually go down into the soil instead of sitting up here in this thatch layer. It's just going to help you. It's going to cause disease, and it's going to bring forth insect issues. So if we see here, here are little holes that we've prepared by aerating, and we allow water to penetrate down into the soil, and we allow oxygen to penetrate down to the root system, and nutrients either through compost or humus, or applied through a chemical fertilizer down to the root zone instead of up here on the surface. It's not doing any good up there. It needs to be down here into the soil. So timing for aerification is very important. We want to do it while the grasses are growing. So we're not going to do it in the winter. We don't want to do it in the middle of summer because the plant can be kind of stressed out. It's very hot, it's droughty, so we don't want to cause damage to the plant during this time frame and inadvertently cause some stress. So really, for me, springtime is our best for aerating because the grass is going to recover the quickest, because you see this growth trend, it keeps putting on more growth. So if we aerate here, it's going to put on new roots and grow past that mechanical impact, versus in fall, which is okay if you have to do it in the fall. But just note here, the grass is slowing down, growth and development, its root system is diminishing, so it's going to have a harder time repairing itself as we move into winter. So here's kind of an idea of what a machine is going to look like that aerates. These tines go down several inches into the soil, and then they pull up this little core and then drops those little cores out on the surface. And typically 3 or 4 rainfalls, they break down and level out into the soil. This is the one that we recommend. Okay, that is the core aerator. This plug comes out, but there also is the solid tine aerator, and I would strongly prefer this one because all this does is it punctures a hole, but it doesn't lift that core out of there. So a person could say that, while it's creating a hole in the ground for water and oxygen, it's not really helping your compaction issue because it's squeezing the soil around it as you push this into the soil. So you're causing a little bit of extra compaction, And so, yeah, you could say it's helpful, but this is going to be much more helpful for plug aerator. Okay, how to plant grass. This is a good situation right here. If your grass is just shot, if you got, big time problems, I might talk you into just having it regraded, bring in some compost, and have that incorporated into this planting bed, leveling out any low spots or high spots, getting this site prepared just like we want it before we put sod on this. Um, and that's to help start off with a perfect situation. Um, I think I see this question in here. I'll address that real quick. Typically, we would recommend to aerate maybe every 3 or 4 years. That's really all you need to do it for a home situation. So seeds, sod, sprigs, plugs, what do we do? Sod, unfortunately for us, for our warm season turf grasses, sod is going to be the way to go. You just cannot find St. Augustine seed, and that's that's for a reason, because it's very hard to establish from seed, especially in a homeowner lawn situation. Way too much work. You get a lot of weeds competing for the germinating turf grass, and it's just a pain. It's a real pain. So that's why we do sod for um, for the St. Augustine. Bermuda, I would still recommend it by sod, even though we can get that in seed. Zoysia is going to be sod or plugs, and I'll go through each of those individually here for you real quick. For sod, we have to prepare the soil. That's cultivate the surface nice and loose. Um, we have to, once we put the sod down, we have to keep it moist. Okay, not flooded, but just moist. And then don't fertilize until we start to see some new green growth on there. And that's usually 3 or 4 or 5 weeks after planting. And then as it starts to put on growth, you can go across there and just very lightly um, just cut the tops off that new growth. And that's to help it spread laterally instead of it wanting to grow straight up on you. So this is a good situation of how we plant sod. You can see it's all the way up to the sidewalk, and it's staggered, and the pieces are butted up against each other. And this is important because we want to cover this whole planting surface, and that means that it's going to stay cool and moist, and that grass is going to be able to establish very well. This is what we see a lot of times, or some type of variance of this. I'm hoping that this was a joke picture, but nonetheless, people do this trying to save money. It's just putting the pieces around where it's bare. Um, it's not going to work. If you have a spot that's bare, you really need to go in there and cut it back to a defined shape, and then fill that one area with the sod at the same level that the rest of the soil surface is for the surrounding sod, or else it's going to dry up. All this grass here, all it's going to do in about a month, it's going to all turn brown and die. Plugs. You can get plugs of Zoysia and St. Augustine. This is kind of the cheap way to do it is you plant these out in a grid. You can buy these trays that have 18 of these small rooted plugs, and then you go out about every 12 inches in a grid and you plant the plugs at ground level, and then eventually they'll spread into this turf grass area. It's the cheaper way, but it's also the more labor intensive way because we're going to have weeds growing all in here that we have to control. And it's going to be a real headache for you. Sprigs. Sprigs are just like little rooted pieces of the grass that you can put out. Unfortunately for us, for a home lawn, neither of these are a good idea. Turf grass farms, we use sprigs to start new field areas. It takes a lot of soil cultivation, kind of get these things lodged in the ground so that they'll root in. But for a homeowner situation, sprigs are not a good idea. And you see here, you've got the runners, the stolons um, of your Bermuda, your St. Augustine grass, noting that each one of these little nodes here produces roots. So this is how this grass um, propagates itself asexually instead of from seed. We just let it grow out and then cut it and plant it from this and keeps going. So then we have seed. Like I mentioned, Bermuda grass, you can get seeds, centipede. There are some seeds available, but again, don't recommend it. Zoysia also don't recommend it. Ryegrass, if you had to overseed, um, um, you can find those seeds readily available um, at farm and ranch suppliers, feed stores, etc. We'll have that if you need it. You've got to have good seed to soil contact, and you have to have a moist soil bed here. So this is one of the most challenging parts of seeding turf grass is keeping the plant alive while it germinates. So this very critical time, this little seed is starting to germinate, sends this little root radical into the soil. It's trying to find some moisture and some nutrients. And if we have a hot day and it's dry and breezy, that plant's going to die. It's going to shrivel up and die, and you lose your germination and you wasted your money. So don't really recommend that for us. The problem that I see is when you go to the garden centers, you'll see these bare spot seed mixes and so forth. Well, those, unfortunately, if you look at the seeds that are in there, those um, they're going to be mostly cool season annual grasses. And so we're looking, at a splotchy area in our St. Augustine. We try to plant those in, April or May. And as soon as they come up, they die because they don't like the hot weather. So buyer beware on those types of quick fill seed packet type things. Maintenance, very important stuff. You got to have all these things here for your grass to grow. And as soon as we miss out on any of these aspects, well, that grass is going to diminish in its vigor and appearance. So we'll go through all those here little by little. This little concept here is very interesting. We use this quite often with agricultural production. And this is called the law of the minimum. And it basically states that, that if this barrel is full, then that means that plant is working at maximum efficiency and it's going to be the healthiest that it can be. But every time that we minimize any of these necessary inputs, like oxygen, water, sunlight, fertility, pH, every time we limit one of those, the total overall ability of that plant to have maximum health diminishes, leads out the side. So if we have only one issue and maybe it's oxygen is down to here, well, then we still have most of our barrel full. Okay, but if I have one of these elements, in this case sunlight, that's very diminished, then that means this water goes all the way down to that level. And so now all of a sudden the plant is only working at 50% efficiency. Okay, so it only has the ability to do 50% as good as it could or should. That means it's going to be sparse, yellow, weak, declining. It's going to have weed problems. It's going to have pest problems, etc. So be cognizant of all those inputs. They're all very necessary. Mowing. This is going to change throughout the year. Really, we're just talking about mowing during the growing season, and mow often. Once the grass starts growing in spring, mow it often, because if we cut more than 1/3 of the plant off, then we're causing some significant stress on this plant. Lawnmowers haven't been around very long. And this land right here would have been the way that we kept our grass down 200 years ago. Lots of variations here how we can get that grass cut. We've got the lazy guy in the front of the four-wheeler. We can use pets or livestock, doing some rotational grazing. We can bring some livestock around the yard, or we can get really creative and come up with some pretty cool ideas of how we can get that grass cut fast. But however you do it often. Mowing height is always one that we talk about. St. Augustine grass and Bahia, which is not really a managed residential grass. Mostly the St. Augustine grass here. We want to cut that high. We get down into the hybrid Bermuda grasses, then we can start cutting those down pretty low. Yeah. All right, so here we go. Mowing height. So St. Augustine grass, 2.5 to 4 inches. So, you got to be honest with that. Take a ruler out there and measure 4 inches, and that's pretty high. But that's how the grass wants to be managed at. Cut it lower than that, plant is going to get stressed out. You're going to have weed problems. If you keep your St. Augustine high, then you use less water. You have less weed pressure, and the grass is just healthy, so you don't get as much disease or insect pressure. And so over here are hybrid Bermuda grasses, 1 inch to 2.5 inches. Again, within this range, we're going to kind of see a difference of how well that looks. Hybrid Bermuda grass looks better when it's cut short, but you could say that health-wise, it's going to do better up here in this 2.5 inch range. Yeah, so this shows you that. So this is on a sports Bermuda trial. We're cutting this at a 1.25 inches, 1/2 inch, 2 inches on Bermuda grass. This looks great for turf grass situation for a sports field, but this one over here, it's actually the plant's gonna be healthier for us, even though we lose that beautiful tropical, well-managed look to it. This is going to be easier for us to maintain. And then over here at 2 inches, yeah, I'm looking at that. That's a lot of thatch that I might not want to deal with. So happy medium on that one. Taller your grass, deeper the roots go, so they're able to mine water and nutrients down deeper into the soil. So, keep it as tall as you can within that recommended height. And then again, mowing it, let's put that down here, mowing it more frequently, you're going to be able to cut it over here where this green check mark is, as we're just taking the tops of the leaf blades off. If we're responding to a lack of mowing, then we start cutting down the base of the plant, and this is way too low, and you scalp it down, and that's going to make it stressed. It's going to get sunburned, and then you're going to get some problems there. Splotchy open areas where weeds take over, and then if the plant is stressed, you're going to get more insect and disease pressure. Another thing to think about is, if you ever sharpened your blades on the mower, picture on the right shows a pretty good cut on turf grass. This is going to heal up really fast versus this blade with a dull mower blade. Not only shreds the grass, but you start to see some leaf spot issues on here because of these open wounds on the grass. So keep your mower blades sharp. Mulching mower or a mulching blade on your mower is worth a whole lot because it's going to chop those clippings down small, and then it's going to be digested by microorganisms and really turn into fertilizer for you. So if you don't have a mulching blade, it spits out big clippings, takes them a long time to decompose, and then that kind of turns into thatch in the turf profile, and that may cause some disease problems for you. Suma, I know I'm going 100 miles an hour here, but I would entertain any questions if we've got them.
I don't have any except my own. I wanted to know where we can get TAM Star.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the TAM Star is a new introduction from Texas A&M, and I believe Geo turf, but you might be able to get it from King Ranch Turf Grass, and they have a sales location in Katy. But quantities on that are still pretty limited because it's a new variety. So if you can imagine how long it takes to field grow this to a certain volume, so you may have a hard time finding it readily available. I would say probably in another 2 years, it'll be pretty common in the market.
So there are a couple of other questions, but I have a feeling you're going to cover them.
Mhm.
Best times to fertilize and treat St. Augustine for bugs, and
Mhm.
also best times to water and how often.
Good. Yep, I will cover all of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Suma. All right, so here's the growth pattern of our warm season turf grasses. So two things we notice here is that the grass starts growing new leaves, but if you look underground, you'll see the root development, and that as our warm season turf grasses go dormant in the winter, they shed off most of their root system. So you can see it just diminishes to where there's hardly any roots at all. And I've been out in situations where you can grab the turf grass and it just comes right out of the ground because there's not much roots there anchoring into the soil. So this suggests a couple things about watering and fertilization, is just knowing that this is going to start coming out of dormancy usually about April 1st for us, and then it's going to go dormant somewhere here in the middle of October or in November. Um, water supplies for us, normally we're at about 46, 48 inches of rainfall a year. As we go back here and look at October of 2011, we hadn't received any measurable amount of rainfall all summer. So, you know, being aware that there are going to be significant climate changes, but the impacts are the same, is that the plants are really demanding the same amount of water. So if we're getting our normal rainfall, honestly, we shouldn't be irrigating much at all. But we do get into these situations where we have to offset the water needs of the plant. And hopefully we don't get back here again. That was a miserable year. So this is kind of the situation that sometimes we get into is, our municipalities are going to demand that we cut the water off, and you're going to get brown turf. This turf here, this is Bermuda grass, and it's gone summer dormant, which means it didn't get any rainfall, it didn't get irrigation, and so it went dormant during the summertime. Is it dead? No, it's not dead. But if you're desperate in those situations, well, people actually do this. These are low impact dyes. You can color that, and as soon as the drought restrictions come off, grass will grow back through this and come out of dormancy with water. A little overkill in my book, but there are services that provide this. Or you can get a little creative with it. I think my cohorts, Skip Richter, took this picture in Austin. This grass here wasn't able to be watered through the summertime, and so they got a little creative and artistic with how they responded to it. Yeah, hey, that's Austin for you. All right. So how much irrigation do they need? Well, that's going to depend on what your expectations are. What we tend to say is that in the growing season, in the peak of the warm season, 1 to 2 inches per week of water are what takes the soil to have the right amount of moisture for that plant to continue growing. 1 to 2 inches. And so for Bermuda grass, on the low side because it's more drought tolerant, so you could say 1 inch. And then the St. Augustine grass is kind of in that 1 to 2 based off of your expectation. Like this picture here, super maintained, super green, lush grass. We're going to want 2 inches a week of water on this. And that is keeping in mind the consideration of natural rainfall. So having some type of a rain gauge there or some type of a rain sensor on your irrigation controller to help us manage water appropriately. So how do we know how much water we're putting out with our irrigation? Well, there's lots of ways to do it. You can take a ruler out in the yard, and we're going to go out with some coffee cans or some tuna fish cans or cat food cans. If you're fancy, you can buy these nice rainwater catch cans. We're just going to take several of these tuna fish cans, put them out in the different areas or the zones of your landscape, and then we're going to turn the irrigation on for 15, 20 minutes, whatever we just decide the length is going to be. And then after that time frame is up, let's say 20 minutes, we're going to take a ruler and we're going to measure the depth of the water and average that out with all the cans in that certain zone. So if it's your front lawn and that's one zone, put a couple of these spaced out, and then you'll go and measure the height of these, average them out, and that's going to give you your precipitation rate for that zone. So this is a little technical, I know, but just to show you. So zone 1, let's say that's front yard. These are all the catch cans, and this is in 20 minutes, this is how much water each of those cans had. We average them out, and this is what our average is. And then we times that by 3, excuse me, and then that's going to give you how much water we're applying per hour. Basically 1.5 inches that is running for an hour. So that helps us adjust our run time for our zones so that we have a pretty good idea of how much water we're putting out each time that we irrigate. And you'll find out pretty quick. If we're saying you need 1 inch of water a week, I bet a lot of people are putting out 8 to 10 inches of water. Way too much. Okay, when this is all they need is that 1 inch. So we can look on the other side of it of less than optimum. So deficient irrigation suggests that less than what the plant needs. Okay, so this shows that here. This was another research project. This is 1 inch per week. So this is the St. Augustine grass. Looks pretty healthy, nice and green. And then we start diminishing the amount of rain or water applied. 3/4, half, quarter, 1/10. So 1/10, you could say, yeah, all right, I would go to Las Vegas and say that this doesn't look good. This one here, well, they got a little bit of thatchy stuff in there, but it's still green. But if you took these two away from this picture and you just had these three lined up, not a whole lot of difference. I mean, let's be honest, people. From here to here, there's just a little bit of thatch in there, but this is still pretty nice and green. I would take this at home for sure. And I'm using half the amount of water. Okay, so if we like, you know, paying for a $75 water bill versus a $250 water bill, just turn the irrigation down. You'd be surprised how much water and money you save. Okay. And so similar to that, here is our, we don't have enough water. Here's our optimum amount here. Woo, grass is loving it. And then over here, excessive. Okay. Plant health is this line. Your plant health, once you get past that point, your plant health is diminishing pretty quickly because we have way too much water in the soil and there's some really big things going on that's causing that plant to really decline on you pretty fast. So you know what we tend to do as humans is we see something that doesn't look right, we just add more water to it, and so the problem could have already been it was overwatered, and then now we're further down this line, and this is all the stuff here that's going to be a problem: rooting, growth, recovery, pests, disease, etc. So try to stay here. Or even here, you know, you can get away with being in this drier zone here without a problem. This right here was a cool project here that was done several years back with our turf grass research program. And just a quick explanation of what we had going on is we took randomized replicated plots of our 3 common turf grass species for the warm season. And we the little bitty squares in here is pretty. We got it all nice and green, irrigated, fertilized. Plants are super healthy. And we cut the water off and we turned this barn cover over the top of it. So we're diminishing sunlight and we're not allowing any type of moisture on the plants. No water, no irrigation, no dew for 60 days. So we're simulating this drought, long-term drought. That's a 2-month period with no water. And so we would say, oh man, 2 months in the summer, that's tough. This grass here is completely dead. It's not. It's all dormant. It goes summer dormant. So what we noticed here, so what we have, you know, once we open that back up and we got the sunlight on it and we put some water on there, we started noticing the grass starts increasing. So this is, you know, 30% of green growth on the St. Augustine. Within 60 days, it was up to 100% green cover, okay, of just proper maintenance. All these varieties, they all eventually got back up to 100% green growth. Do I see a grass? Again, some of them way down here. Like no, this is like 0 green. This is brown, looks super dead. Within 60 days, 100% green canopy on that turf grass. Bermuda grass, same thing, nearly completely brown, yellow, crispy. 60 days, all the varieties listed here, back to 100% living green ground cover. So this is just suggests to people who, you know, want to argue with me about how much water these plants need in the summertime. Yeah, they need it, but they're not dying because of lack of watering. They're probably dying from compacted soils or foot traffic or shade or some other input. These are very durable plants. I mean, to say I could go from this variety, Tex turf, from completely brown and crispy in 60 days, I can get this up to a 100% green healthy canopy. It's a big testament to the durability of these species that we've chosen. Really, really awesome, really amazing. So fertilization on these grasses, whoa, hey, This is a soil sample analysis. So if you've done anything with extension, you know you're going to hear us talk about soil sampling. So you dig up a core sample of some soil, send it to the lab, and then they send you back this analysis and recommendation. Okay. I'm not going to dig into this too much today, but we do recommend that you get your soil sampled uh, maybe every 3 years, 2 or 3 years, to help you decide what we need, what nutrients and minerals do we need in the soil, because you, without knowing this, more than likely you're applying the wrong stuff, and that's never a good thing. So over application of fertilizer, again, if we're applying the wrong stuff or too much of it, well, this phosphorus and nitrogen, these are the things that make all that green algae down in the creeks and bayous, and then maybe eventually turn into algae blooms in the wetlands and down in the Gulf of Mexico. So we don't want to over apply nutrients. We want to apply just what is needed in the soil profile. The other thing to think about is pH, and this is a buffer of soil, which is referenced by the strength of the hydrogen ions, if you want to get scientific, but basically 6.5 to 7 is what we call neutral um, pH. Anything less than 6.5 becomes acidic. Anything greater than 7.5 we call alkaline or basic. And so what that basically means is if I drew a line, let's see, did he do it? No. If I drew a line down right here at 6.5 to 7, we can see this is maximum nutrient availability, and see all these nutrients are the most available to plants at this pH of the soil. That's why it's crucial. If you have a low pH, well, you may have these nutrients in the soil, but they're not plant available because of the power of the hydrogen ion. It's binding those nutrients up. So your plants aren't able to get what they need. Same thing over here. If we get into an alkaline range, some of these nutrients become limiting. And so your plants aren't getting their food. Food's in the soil, but it's like having a glass wall between you and the food. You can't get it. So sad. But the moral of the story is we can adjust our pH with either the addition of sulfur or calcium, and we can buffer this pH a little bit if we need to try to get it right here in this sweet spot. So again, here we want to test every couple years. Avoid fertilizing just on a calendar basis. Like if you just like, well, I need the super green here, here, and here. More than likely, you're way over applying fertilizer if you're doing that. Do your fertilizing based off of the nutritional recommendations from a soil sample. And if you can, again, use your mulching blade on the mower, because those nutrients in the grass clippings, if you bag those up and get them out of there, well, you're just throwing away that fertilizer. It's in those leaf blades, and so you put it back, microorganisms are eating it and then spitting that back out into your soil so it can be reabsorbed by the grass. Free fertilizer. Amazing stuff. All right, so this is another tricky one. Houston, this is when we have our last frost and when we would recommend to fertilize for the first time. So for Houston area, we might say that February 14th is our last frost date, late winter. And then about April 1st to April 15th is when we would apply our first nitrogen application, our first fertilizer application. Well, I see people out with their fertilizer spreaders on March 1st. And man, I tell you what, they are just taking money and they are just throwing it in the gutter, literally. because this grass has not started growing roots yet. And without roots, it doesn't absorb the fertilizer. Fertilizer just stays in the soil. So it either leaches down into the gutter, or all you're doing is feeding cool season weeds. They'll take advantage of that fertilizer for sure. And then you got to apply a weed killer and la la la. So bad news. Don't do it. I typically say April 15th is our safe date for applying fertilizer. Same thing here. The last time would be October 15th. Okay. That downward trend of turf grass development really diminishes by this point. And so again, I'll see people out there fertilizing in the fall after this in November. And again, they're just wasting fertilizer and encouraging weeds to grow. Don't do it. So these things kind of go side by side. We don't put enough fertilizer out. There's not fertility in the soil. You have poor growth, and we're encouraging disease and insects. If you put too much, grass grows too fast, and we encourage disease and insects. So, we got a sweet spot right here in the middle where we want just enough of what the plant needs in the soil so that it maximizes growth and doesn't encourage disease and insects. These are stress induced. So if it's stressed because it doesn't have enough food, you get problems. If it's got too much food, it grows too fast and weak, and you get bugs and diseases. So you gotta try to stay in that sweet spot, and that's where that soil test really comes into play. And I saw there in that chat dialogue that Nancy just put in that link for the soil testing lab. I'm not going to dig into that because of time, but go there and you'll learn all about how you get your soil tested moving forward. Real quickly, this is just suggesting that if we have a fast, readily available form of nitrogen, so if like the fertilizer says like super green up, like tomorrow it's going to be glowing green, may not be the best thing, because this is what happens. It's like when you eat a bunch of junk food. You get this spurt of growth and energy, and then just as fast, blah, it diminishes down to nothing. So we want to avoid this because this causes stress. The plant grows really fast, and then it diminishes, and then so it causes this plant to be really stressed out. What we want is more of a fertilizer growth trend like this with a slow release. So you look for a fertilizer that says slow release or slow activated, slowly available, long lasting, are the kind of the key words there that suggest that it's going to just be released in a slow manner so that we get this more gradual growth trend. This is what we want more than we want this huge spike in growth and development. So look for those blends that just says, season long or slow release or slow activated formulation. You get all these numbers with the fertilizers. Again, this website for the soil and water testing lab is here. Within that website, as Nancy mentions, there's some additional resources there as well, including a calculator to calculate the types of fertilizers and how much you need. If you're trying to gather the area of your lawn, there's lots of ways to do that. Sometimes we just have to go back to some good old-fashioned geometry, but there are some online tools where you can put it in there and it'll calculate it for you if you don't want to have to remember high school math. You see this quite often. This is a drop spreader, and I could just follow this guy's footsteps back and forth through here. So be aware of good even coverage. In this situation here, you probably want to do a cross pattern, try to minimize any of that striping, or use a broadcast spreader that throws the fertilizer out and you get more of a uniform color. Common lawn problems. All right, so here we go. Here's the fun stuff here, and we deal with these quite often. Everything is connected, right? So when we look at problems, um, people want us to just hand them a chemical solution and move forward, and a lot of times that's not the outcome. We need to figure out, well, what's causing the problem? Well, there's lots of reasons here: water, compaction, sunlight, salt levels, pH, fertilizer imbalances. Lots of reasons why our plants can be looking bad beyond the initial knee-jerk reaction, which tends to be insect and disease pressure. So we want this integrated approach to how we respond to those problems. So it's not only rectifying it with a treatment, but we're going to try to identify, hey, what is the underlying cause for this problem? Okay. And I'm more concerned with you fixing that. Let's get rid of that cause. And then with time, theoretically, you could say that it would rectify itself without any type of a chemical input. So we want to slowly. I know it's tough because just as a culture, we're 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 made to just think we could just get in the car and go to the garden center and go buy the solution and put it on there and fix it. A lot of times, something that we need to do with our landscape to get rid of that problem. Excess shade. Well, I'm sorry, but this is probably most of your problems with your grass as trees. And most of our HOAs, their covenants say you've got to have 2 live oak trees in a 500 square foot front yard. I'm so sorry, but that turf grass at some point is going to die, and you're going to have to think of a new solution because the trees aren't getting any smaller. The shade that you have is going to get thicker and more dense, and the grass is going to diminish to the point where it just goes away. And reseeding or sodding is not going to fix the problem. You have to have the sunlight. The sunlight goes away, so does the turf grass. So
Talking of which, Boone, what do we do with the roots, oak tree roots in the front yard?
yeah, that's always a trick because like in this situation here, I believe this is on the university campus. We plant a tree in this situation. Usually the turf grass area is bermed up a little bit, but as those areas of bare soil stay there, after every rainfall, you're losing, a 16th of an inch of your topsoil. So when we see lateral exposed roots on trees, those roots aren't coming up. It's just that the soil is eroding away from the roots of those trees. So in that type of a situation, we either need to address that by mulching a good area around the base of those trees or applying thin layers of topsoil to try to build that soil level back up above those roots. We do not ever recommend severing lateral tree roots um, for many reasons, but your best bet there is to gradually bring the soil back up and then cover it with some type of a mulch, ground cover, or turf grass. So in this, again, filtered shade. So at some point during the day, this is getting direct sun, but it's also just getting this filtered sunlight. So it's going to grow pretty good in here. Same thing with the St. Augustine. Certain times of the day, it's getting direct sun, and then you got filtered sunlight. It's going to do well. If this is shaded like this all day, and this is all the sun that it gets, it's not going to stay this way. It's going to thin out on you.
So, question.
Hmm.
Does St. Augustine need to be dethatched? If so, how often and when is the best time to do it?
Um, yeah, I do not recommend dethatching St. Augustine grass because St. Augustine only grows by stolons, and these are the above ground runners. They don't have rhizomes. So Bermuda grass has rhizomes. They grow underground. So if you dethatch that, the grass is going to be able to recover very quickly and grow back up. If you use a dethatcher on St. Augustine grass, there's a good chance that you end up removing a lot of the turf grass that you need, and then it's going to grow back very sparse. So instead of using a dethatcher in spring, I would usually recommend your first cut of cutting it a little low, and then use a bagger if you can. If you don't have a bagger, just follow up with a lawn rake and rake up all that thatchy clippings, remove all that, and then the rest of the year just use a mulching blade and just mulch it. All right, so this right here, I'm not going to have you go into this, but this gives you an idea of what my brain looks like every time we get a picture about a bad looking lawn. There's lots of steps for us to decide what's going on with that grass, but really not a whole lot of potential problems. So despite the cluster of this picture, it's pretty easy. So here we go. First one here is large patch, or what's commonly referred to as brown patch. And these were these little alien circles during the cool season. And this is pretty easy to control. The biggest equation here, or variable to the equation, is water. Okay, so if we can get rid of excess moisture or low spots in the yard, then it goes away. It's only there during the cool season of spring and fall, and summertime it goes away. So if we can just kind of address our irrigation or drainage in the lawn, brown patch will take care of itself. Not really a need to use a fungicide on this. Um, Lots of products out there, but honestly, get rid of the low-lying areas and then fix the condition. Fix the amount of water that's being applied to the landscape. In the spring and fall, if we're getting natural rainfall and um, everything else looks right, you should not be watering. And this is the big monster that we've been dealing with for about the last 5 years, as take all root decline. And this, unfortunately, is not like brown patch. This will kill your lawn if you don't address it. So it just starts off in one spot and it kind of just moves randomly around the yard, and you get these big, thin, crispy areas. Um, and then eventually it looks like this, and not a whole lot that we can do once it gets out of hand. Basically, it kills the nodes and it kills all the roots, and then the grass declines little by little. Um, I thought this was fun. It looks like a weird long thumb, like a thumbs up, but this is what it does to the stolon. It just gets in there and then just eats it from the inside, and then before you know it, your grass is just about gone. So what do you do? Well, we're not really sure yet because fungicides for this problem are pretty expensive. I, the people that I've worked with where I've recommended certain um, chemicals and practices have had some success, but a lot of times what happens is you rip out the old grass, replant with new healthy grass, and then within like 3 or 4 years, it starts to show up again. So this is one that you need to get tested for. So we do have a pathology lab that would accept a sample from your turf grass to be able to validate that that's what you're dealing with. If I'm responding to take all patch questions, I always recommend a test because it's expensive to treat, right? These fungicides are pricey and all the other stuff that you have to do. So you would want to contact our office or the Master Gardener hotline. We would show you how to do that, a sample for the pathology lab. And then once the lab report says, yes, indeed, this is take all root decline, then we could help you move forward with some type of a strategy. Honestly, in a lot of cases, if you're not willing to spend a whole lot of time and money, it might be a question mark of turning that area into a mulch bed or a low input ground cover, because this is a pretty nasty fungus. There are some treatments for this with peat moss and other organic matter to try to use good fungi in the soil to combat the bad ones, but you really are going to need to use a fungicide to treat this disease. St. Augustine decline is just kind of the grass just gets old and thin and weak, and then gradually it starts declining on its own. Only thing to do here is replace the sod with a newer, more resistant variety. But we don't see much of this around here, to be honest with you, and that's what that looks like. All right, let's see how we're doing. And we are at 3:30, folks, and I'm gonna keep going. I'm so sorry. I got two more sections here on weeds and insects, which are very informative. But at this point here would be our normal finish line for the presentation. So, Christina, if it's all right, I'll keep going. Um,
No
but if
problem.
but if folks do need to leave, I do want to note this and be aware that, as Christina mentioned, the whole presentation is being recorded, and you will get a copy of the complete presentation. So if you didn't schedule an extra 30 minutes for us, don't worry about it. You can go back later and watch the recorded presentation of the last portion. But if you're not in a hurry and you really want this last information, then hang out with us. Is that okay?
It's fine with me.
Awesome.
Yes.
So right now, Suma, do we have any questions on hold?
No, I don't see any. I don't see
Okay.
any questions. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Awesome. All right. Weeds. Man, weeds for us is tough because they grow year round. We have weed species that never rest, and it's a tough thing for us. Main thing is try not to get weed problems. And I know you're probably like, well, yeah, of course, but that's very simple. And that each year that you control weeds, you are diminishing the seed bank of weeds in your soil profile. So in theory, if you keep them under control year by year, the weed pressure is going to become less and less and less, to the point where it's very easily managed without mechanical, cultural, or chemical inputs. So that's kind of number one, of just stay on top of it. Don't let it become a problem, so that um, something that you're constantly dealing with. Okay. So there are a lot of chemical products out there. I'm going to go through some of those, and we're going to be talking about the strengths and weaknesses of those products. Right here, Suma, this is your organic weed control. I know that she's hoping that I'm going to say corn gluten meal or something for weed control or vinegar. Um, but I'm just not going there, because the weeds that we have are difficult, and they're persistent, and they're evil. And so the only way that you're going to be able to do this without chemicals is manual removal. Sharpshooter, hand trowel, this weed demon here, of just staying on top of it. Being that person that's out there If you see a couple weeds here and there, don't go get the herbicide. Just get it up, dig it out of there. Or a lot of them, like your annual reseeding weeds, just keep the grass mowed at the appropriate height. And then, if you got a lot of weed seeds in there, bag that up and get it out of there. Don't let those seeds get back into the soil profile. So we've got grassy weeds, which is, this is a turf grass, but it's also a weed, Bahia, in a Bermuda grass situation. And it spreads by these very aggressive stolons, so it can kind of grow right into a large area pretty fast. You see the seed head on here. It'll produce this type of seed head, within 3 or 4 days after mowing. So you got to keep it mowed to stop it from going to seed and spreading. And also you have to control it pretty quick because these runners can take off and grow out into a large area pretty fast. Let me go back. So like we see this, I waited too long here. See this little patch here? I could have got in there with a trowel or a little sharpshooter and I could have dug that out, put a little mulch over that, and I would have been okay. But within a year, it turned into this. And now I've got something that I really have to use a herbicide in there to get this under control. So keep an eye on weeds, control them early, like this little patch and this patch, instead of trying to control this big area. Annual bluegrass that grows in the winter. It's this little monster little grass, all these little white seeds on it. This is a tough one to control, and the best thing for this is going to be what we call a pre-emergent herbicide, and this is basically as the seeds start to germinate, that chemical will inhibit the successful germination, and the seed will abort. But timing is crucial. You have to have that post-emergent activated on the soil profile before these seeds start to germinate. This is an annual, so it's going to seed out in the spring, and then it's going to germinate in the fall, October and November. So we have to have that pre-emergent out here like in September. Summer weeds, grassy weeds, crabgrass. This is terrible, but good thing about it is that I can take a trowel, I can dig this center part up, and then this whole big plant will lift up, and then I can cover that and move on. Don't let it get huge, because if you've ever tried to remove a fully mature crabgrass, you have to dig about a 30-foot hole in your grass in your yard. So catch them young, grub them out of there, and then let your turf grass fill in that area and mature. Grass burrs or sticker burrs or whatever we want to call them, these things are painful to step on. Again, this is an annual grass, so a pre-emergent weed killer to try to stop this from growing in the first place. Other thing is to keep it mowed regularly so that it doesn't produce the seeds. And some people even will drag carpets across the grass, and they'll try to suck up all these little burrs to stop them from germinating for the following year. Ooh, oh, that's so painful just looking at it. All right, Vic, broadleaf weeds, I'm gonna get to them. We've got some good ones in here. Easy to control. A lot of our broadleaf weeds are pretty easy to control. We've got a range of them here that are kind of tedious. And then over here, yeah, there you go. Virginia buttonweed. It's a pretty nasty plant for us. Lespedeza is a new one for us, but I'm seeing it quite regularly. It's just this little thing kind of grows down in the turf. Honestly, for me, and again, this is just me, I don't even control this. It doesn't grow upright. It just kind of grows down into the turf. But you can use some selective herbicides to kill this out if you needed to. Henbit, This is a cool season broadleaf plant. Again, on this one, all you have to do is just keep the grass mowed regularly so that it doesn't produce the seed pods. It's an annual plant, so if there's no seeds, there's no plant for the next year. But you can also use a pre-emergent herbicide to diminish the ability for it to reproduce the next year. Several different types of clovers. These ones are tough to grub out because they grow so low down into the turf. So again, can we just deal with that in the grass if everything is nice and green? If not, we'll have to grub this out or use a herbicide on it. Spurges, there's several different species of spurges, and this one is just going to only be active if there's bare spots on the soil. So the best thing for this is just to have a good tall grass. Don't scalp it. This grass has been scalped, and then you have bare spots, and then this spurge grows in those bare spots. So if you got a good tall thick canopy of grass, this thing will not grow there. Oh, lots of
So,
chemicals.
question.
Yeah.
Victor wants to know, is there any way to control Virginia buttonweed?
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't want to know my answer. He knows the answer. Well, you sell, I mean, you go to the garden center. I mean, it's just shimmering sea, colors, all this different stuff. But you got to realize that all these are what we call selective herbicides. Okay, so they're trying to select to kill one thing, but not kill another thing, right? And we're really not that good with this. I mean, a lot of the stuff, like you see the commercials, it's like, oh yeah, this is perfect. It's not the case. So like this here, with this atrazine in it, sure, it's going to kill those weeds, but my turf grass doesn't like this. We've tried to make a product. I say we, I didn't do it, but the chemical companies tried to make something that'll kill one thing and not the other, but it's not foolproof. These products are, especially like midsummer while it's hot, the plants are stressed. Uh, all these are going to hurt the grass. So be careful. Don't go out there and just start grabbing products and spraying on there. Sit in the garden center and open the back of this up and read it. Read the label. Learn what the limitations are before you go out and start applying it. Very important. All right, Vic. Here you go. So I tend to tell people, get you a good real estate agent and sell the property. And before you buy your new place, inspect the lawn and just make sure that there's no Virginia buttonweed there. That's really all we can do. We've got some products here that can get rid of it. It takes multiple applications over 2 summers. Kill it. You got to stay on top of it. You got to, every time you see a reemergent of this plant in the grass, you have to spray it. Well, then I said, well, it's hurting the grass too. So it's very tough to do because the more chemicals we put on this, we're hurting the grass. And then if we're creating weak and bare spots, we create areas for the weeds to grow in. So it's a vicious cycle, but you can control this with a combination of herbicides that are listed and appropriate for this weed, for the appropriate turf grass. And the other big thing that we really probably need to address is a wet area. Every time I see Virginia buttonweed, it's in a soggy spot of a lawn that's low, that holds water, stays mushy, and maybe you've got the irrigation system set way too high and way too often. So if you can increase the drainage, if you can cut back on the watering heavily, or just turn it off, you will choke this weed out because this is a wetland plant. It's a native wetland plant. So if we get rid of the wetland, the plant starves. It can't live. It needs that moisture. So cut the water back, appropriate timing and use of herbicides, we can get this thing under control. Similar to that, doveweed, or the dayflower is another one similar to this that are kind of a real pain. Again, seasonal selective herbicides on these products are really the only way to go. Nut sedges, they are identified because they have a triangular stem if we cut it. But if you see this, man, you've gone way too far. Because if this plant is flowering in your yard like this, you have left this alone way too long. And this is another one here where you probably want to sell the property and move somewhere else. Make this somebody else's problem to deal with. Again, this is one that is going to be really prevalent in wet spots. Sedges are wetland plants. Dollarweed, I see on there, is a wetland plant. Okay, so if those things are growing in your landscape, in your turf grass, you've created a wetland. And I'm not beating you up, but that's just the honesty of it. Those plants love wet, poor drainage situations. You have to improve the drainage. You have to cut back on the watering, or else these are going to be a reoccurring issue for you. Sure, there's some herbicides for this. We can spray on these when they're young. We can get rid of them. But these products, they're hard on the grass. So they're going to make our grass turn yellow and stunted. So we have to be very careful how much we apply and when we apply them. And then also to cut back on the water. I'm not sure if I have a specific slide on dollarweed on here, but it's going to be the same product here. This Weed Be Gone Max. You know, anything that you see at the garden center that says dollarweed, or like Chondra control for southern lawns right here. See this? Y'all have to be very cognizant that there's probably anything you buy says southern lawns, or if you read the label and it says Bermuda grass or St. Augustine. Okay, because this is what we can do right here. All right, this was some Facebook posts and they're saying, man, I put this stuff on my grass and it's dead. Grass is dead. Well, this herbicide that's in here, of course, this is not made for southern turf grass. This is made for like a Kentucky bluegrass or something way up north. And so, yeah, this is selective, but it's not selective for your St. Augustine grass, and it killed their grass. And they were out quite a bit of money to replace the whole grass. So always, you want to look for this that says turf builder for southern lawns, or read the label sufficiently and make sure that it says for St. Augustine grass. Or on the back of this one here, it's going to say something like, do not use on St. Augustine grass. I'm sorry if you've been in this situation before. I'm not laughing at you. I know your pain. I deal with a lot of people who use the wrong products on their landscape. And so buyer beware, always read the label. Other solutions, mowing, mow regularly, mow at the right height. Irrigation, just what the plant needs, no more than that. Same thing with fertilization, balanced fertility, the right timing of fertilization. Removal is a viable solution, to a shade situation that's not going to improve removal of turf grass, and putting in a mulch bed or a shade ground cover may be your best option. Treatments here of herbicides pre-emergent, which means you put this on before the weeds grow from seed, or post-emergent, which is usually a liquid that we spray on the weeds directly to kill them without having to treat the whole lawn. All right, bugs. I think this will get us to the finish line. We don't have a whole lot of problems with turf grass, but we do have some. These are grubs, chinch bugs, sod webworms, and fall armyworms. I'm going to talk about these real quick. If you have these critters hanging around your yard, I see a lot of this over in Sienna Plantation and around Fulshire. Armadillos, skunks, raccoons. They're probably looking for the grubs that are in your soil. These big old white grubs in here, and these are beetle larvae, and they feed on the roots of your plants, and they cause basically yellowing, slow growth, declining areas. Doesn't kill the grass, but it makes it pretty weak, and the plant is not happy because these are eating the roots of the plant. We can dig a hole in the ground. Usually we say to take a post hole digger, dig down about 6 inches, spread that soil out onto a piece of plywood and count the number of grubs that are in that, 5-inch by 6-inch profile. If there's more than 1 or 2 grubs, you've got a problem there. And so there's chemical treatments there. You can put a pest control product that's soil active. Some people are using these beneficial nematodes as a biological control. These are good nematodes, and they actually move through the soil and they attack these and other bugs in the soil. So this is actually proven through research, so I can validate that this does work. But beyond that, I think your other solution is going to be a chemical application. Chinch bugs, these things do kill the grass. So what they do is they inject a toxin into the leaf or the stolon, breaks down that leaf tissue, and then they slurp out all the insides of the grass. And that's bad enough, but that enzyme that they put inside the plant is toxic to the plant. It kills it. So if it didn't have that, if it didn't have that toxic enzyme thing, this wouldn't be a problem for us. But it will kill the grass if you get enough of these in there. So you have to, you got to get rid of this, or you get rid of the grass, or you don't, it dies. This is usually active right now, like midsummer into late summer, early fall, while it's hot and dry. You'll see areas that are just irregular dead patches of grass. You can look for these. If you see any little bugs in there, I usually take a water hose and I'll flood an area. And if you see any of these little bugs coming up, all it takes is one. If you see one, you've seen enough. You would need to treat that area with an appropriate labeled insect control product, whether chemical or organic. Spinosad is a organic natural derivative that actually works pretty good on chinch bugs. So this is what you'll see is it's just dead. And then they're just moving out into the green grass. So try to scout these early. If you see some dead areas starting to show up just kind of in weird spots, get out there, try to see if you can find some of these adults, and then treat this as soon as possible before the grass is dead. And then I think baby here. So you can see there's a little orange one, small, immature, and you can see the adult over here with these geometric wing sheets on here. So again, 1, 2, that's enough. That's all I need to see. I need to treat that area and get those out of there. So again, lots of ways we can do it. I just like to take water and flood this area and then get down on my hands and knees. And if I see those bugs climbing up the leaf surface, that's all it takes to identify that they're there. And lots of products that you're going to see at the garden center that are going to be labeled for chinch bugs. Just make sure you read the label thoroughly before you apply them. Sod webworms. This is one that's become quite an issue for us in the last couple of years. These are late summer, fall. You'll see these little moths fluttering around in the evenings, and then before you know it, the grass looks really bad. It doesn't kill the grass, but it chews it all up and really sets it back quite a bit. So there are chemical controls, but there is also several BT, or the Bacillus thuringiensis. This is a bacterium, so this would be labeled organic, that you can apply. The larvae ingests the BT and then they die. So it works pretty good on this pest. And oh yeah, there's the little larvae, nasty little monster. They eat the roots and the stolons of the grass before you really even see what's going on. This one here, again, you got a little bit larger moth, kind of this dusky gray color, but this larvae is actually larger and feeds on the tops of the leaves. So you'll see these army worms just starting from the top, and they just eat a leaf blade down to the ground. So with these, early detection is good because, as the name suggests, there's tons of them out there, and so it would just take a couple days before they diminish the plant. So same deal with this. We can use several chemical products, or we can use the organic BT to control those. Just make sure the sooner the better. As soon as you notice the problem, go ahead and start responding as quick as possible before they impact the grass. All right, just a couple things here while we walk to the finish line. Mow often at the proper height. Drought is an exception within this, we want to keep this at a higher height that we can to shade out the soil surface. Fertilize so that we have balanced nutrition and we don't have excess of anything. Don't fertilize when you have seasonal fungus present, like if you've got a reoccurring problem with brown patch. Don't respond by fertilizing. That's just going to put fuel to the fire with this disease. So be cognizant of watching your nitrogen levels when you're dealing with disease problems. Water with conservation in mind, okay? Don't water in the winter. Usually what we tell people is on November 1st is we just go to your irrigation controller and turn it off and leave it off probably till about March 15th or April 1st before we go and turn that back on to our summer watering pattern, or just leave it off and then wait till we get into a situation where water is limited from rainfall, and then just go in and turn it on and only run that during droughty periods. When we get into natural rainfall like this summer, we've had more than enough rainfall. We shouldn't be irrigating at all during these types of patterns. But when we get into a drought, we want to turn those back on. All right. Whoa. And this thing right here real quick is probably a good idea. This was Michael Potter's calendar. So he just kind of created this rudimentary applications of stuff that he did, so that you've got a kind of a note of your inputs on the lawn, and it's going to help you next year. Or if your grass isn't doing good and I ask you what you put on the lawn, you could have that as a reference. So not a bad idea. It doesn't have to be as technical as this, but nonetheless, it's good to have some documentation to remind ourselves what we did past a week ago. sometimes that's challenging in this new world, but good to have data and documentation. So a couple of the sites that were mentioned, I think Nancy and Suma had put up some URLs. AggieTurf.tamu is our turf grass website. Soil testing is our soil and water testing laboratory. FortBend.agrilife.org is our Fort Bend County Extension website. And then last but not least is the Fort Bend Master Gardeners website. And if you have gardening questions, even turf grass questions, that is where you can reach our Master Gardener hotline experts, and they would be more than happy to help you with any gardening issues that you're having. We also accept bragging. You know, I've never had somebody email me a picture of their beautiful plant and brag about how well it was doing. So if you have one of those, please send it to us. I'd love to see something positive. The vast majority of the questions we get are dead or dying plants. So cheer me up, would you? And that's all I have today. That is my presentation on turf grass. And I'm telling you what, we did the whole thing. And I'm going to stop sharing. Well, Christina splashed me with Gatorade. Do we have any questions that people have been holding? This would be a time that we can dialogue as long as you'd like on any of your specific questions and needs.
You can unmute yourself to ask the question if you would like to.
No questions? Going once, going twice. Well, Christina, that's cinch bug spray. The question on chinch bug sprays. So I would go to your local garden center. There's going to be several different labeled products. It's just, work your way through and look at, first you go to the insect control and then dig in through that, and you'll be able, by reading the label, you'll be able to find out which are the appropriate products that they have for chinch bug control. All right. Any other questions? All right. That's it.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you so much, Boone. It was great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Boone. Thank you everyone for coming. If you want more programs like this, we will be continuing the Landscape Success Series on September 21st with the workshop Controlling Landscape Pests and Disease with Nancy Schaefer and Dan Lawler. Registration for that class is open, so you can find that and more and register for it at www.fortbend.lib.tx.us. And as I've said before, this session is recorded. And as Boone has mentioned, it's recorded and it will be going up on the Fort Bend Master Gardener YouTube channel. I will send everyone the link as soon as we upload it. So thank you all very much. If you have any questions, now is a good time. And if not, thank you so much for coming, and I will stop the recording.